Right, Michael, we'll have a chat so about our experience in South Africa. You were there this year, I was there last year, but one of the big memories I have is playing handball with the primary school kids in one of the schools in Cape Town. And one of the teachers was former prisoner like ourselves. But I'm going to play you the video there. It was shortly off a small bit.
Go!
Yeah, I mean, I think just to set the context, James, I mean, that basketball, that school in South Africa, I mean, just for the listeners, what did you see on your way in? Can you describe that before you actually got to the school?
It's a shanty town, like, you know, like it's the homes around it, from what I can remember, are like galvanized steel, you know. One of the striking things about the streets is the dirt, the rubbish. Like, there is no bin service, there is no bin collection. A lot of the homes are makeshift homes without running water and toilets and things like that. And then the school is like a hidden gem amongst it all, where it's immaculate clean and they've fabulous facilities, and the weather and the spirit in the children and the teachers' energy was like a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we had the privilege of visiting that school as well this year. As you say, it's like a beacon of light. So you go through that, you know, as you described them, the shanty towns, you know, poverty, like probably most people will never see, ever feel, or ever experience. And then you come to this sort of school, and the kids are probably some of the most happiest, joyful, and enthusiastic you'll ever meet.
Yeah, it gives you a perspective, don't it? And like the material things that we chase in the West, and how irrelevant they are really in the meaning of life, do you know what I mean? And how you don't need to have the new iPhone or the pair of Air Max or whatever it is that we chase here to be happy. Where over there they have very little material wealth, but they have a great spirit.
Yeah, Spirit is absolutely fantastic. One of my most endearing memories is, as you touched on there, the spirit of the people that you meet, even though they're living in, you know, really difficult and challenging situations. The joy and the happiness and the singing when they meet people from different parts of the world is absolutely incredible.
And what did you visit that school as well?
Yeah, so our experience was slightly different. Very emotional actually, because they gathered most of the school in the assembly hall, and then we walked in as a group of 13 or 14 leaders from different parts of the world, and then they broke into song, and then they watched us go up onto the stage while they were still singing, and then the singing stopped, and then they were asking, which I thought was really good, so they were asking questions related to the country that person was from, to make them feel a wee bit more welcome and a bit more at home. And as you mentioned, the teachers were, you know, truly incredible. And we had as you know yourself, each year GFF, there's a mural that is designed by a local artist, and you know, the fellows get to write their name on it. So our mural was actually designed on the side of the school wall, which we didn't know about. As we were exiting the school, we were told to go down to the left, and then there it was, GFF 25. So yeah, amazing.
Describe the creation or the painting the artist made for your group, Michael.
Yeah, I found this actually quite fascinating, the way he explained it. So he was doing the colours that surrounded the fellows, so the colours that were positioned within the flags of each country. He was trying to represent that within the mural, and then a feeling of opportunity, hope, inspiration. So there was hands going upwards, and within it there was a globe which was to resemble the world, as in the Global Freedom Fellows, and then there was a series of other, I think around that he was trying to represent the community in which we were currently standing. So there was parts of that were dotted around it. And to be fair, I mean, it went that quickly in relation to him describing it us as a collective getting the photographs taken, because then all the children run in, all the children run down from the school to get the photographs taken with us and beside the mural. Do you know what it's like yourself? It just goes really quickly. So it's great to have that photograph and that image, James, to look upon, both as the artist was describing it, and then too just as our group with the artist, and then some of the group managed to get some photographs with the children as well. I unfortunately didn't, because one of our group was from New Zealand and she's a Maori warrior, so she actually was doing the haka to the left with all the kids. So I was recording that.
And do you know, in that school, I remember we were talking to the teacher, and we were asking him about like what challenges the children face and teachers face in the school. And you'll be expecting poverty and addiction in the home and mental illness in the home, but one of the things he said was like something that I wasn't expecting. He said gun crime is a big issue, and they're only 10, 11 years of age. He said, but sometimes they have to bring guns into school because they're under pressure, or there could be a shooting in the school, or they have to search people and things like that. But then they're so innocent children, but they're caught up in that level of criminality at such an early age. And when you hear things like that, then you begin to understand how Cape Town has the highest murder rate in the world.
Yeah, and as we've said throughout this episode, when you're driving through, you can see why gang crime, violence is so prevalent, because there really is nothing in terms of hope and opportunity and aspirations and jobs. I mean, all those micro businesses that I call them, that you see at barbers, and someone selling linen, and someone selling clothes, and someone selling necklaces. I mean, those people are earning, absolutely nothing from the sale of those products, or very little, and that's to feed them for the day or their family for the day. So you can see how some of them get caught up in crime very quickly. Probably more around survival and food and basic amenities than I want to join a gang because I have access to this. It's probably just to survive.
What did you think of Robben Island?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ones for the bucket list, we actually were meant to go on a Monday. There was something wrong with the boat, which was great because the Monday was St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So we went on the Tuesday. Amazing experience.
Will you explain what Robben Island is for the people that might not know?
Yeah, so Robben Island was where Nelson Mandela was held for the best part of his prison sentence. I mean, people talk about the long walk to freedom when you see him leaving the final prison that he was in before the democratic vote was had and he became president. People think about that, the long walk to freedom, when he was doing the salute. The long walk to freedom was his journey through the whole system, which is his 26 years in incarceration. The bulk of those was in a small cell in Robben Island, which was built. I mean, there's history within this in relation to who was put on it initially, why they were put on it. I mean, I found out as part of it there was at least 250 Irish people buried on it who had come over, and they were helping hands to basically develop parts of it, and they were working in kitchens. Which I was completely unaware of, and the feeling of being cut off. When you look at it from a distance, you go, "Oh wow, look at that!" But when you actually are on it and you drive around it, and you walk around it, you get the history of the place, and you feel it and you sense it. So we managed to go into the yard where he was working, manual labour. We were told about the conditions, what the guards, what the officers, embargo on anything the guys were trying to put out. Actually, a lot of them was bribed in most cases about if they were trying to bring a woman in, for instance, and they were going to tell there was a lot of stuff going on to keep them sort of embargoed, both from a political sense and from a human rights perspective. So we saw a part of the yard where Mandela was hiding his diaries or his notebooks, and how they were smuggling them out and where they were found and what happened to them from that. And then I had the real privilege, as did all those who were with us, of standing in his cell. And I just saw the mat on the floor, no bed, his pollution, where I would call his toilet, and then the window. And it was just I'm sure you felt this as well, and I'm sure your group did as well. You just felt like you were standing in history, or travelling through time, just for that one moment. And there was people with us got very emotional in seeing that, and knowing what he went through to get to that stage. So for me, it was, it was hopeful, it was inspirational, it was awe inspiring, it was jaw dropping, just to stand in that present. And I brought our flag with us. I brought the Irish flag.
Yeah.
I managed to let it out, and one of my fellows, he had a Chilean flag with him, so he did likewise. So yeah, absolutely amazing.
It's a small cell. That I remember, like, fucking hell, this is 20 odd years, like, in a very small concrete box, with no TV or anything like that, and accessing information and knowledge was smuggled in and smuggled out. And when you think about any resistance movement around the world, the media will have us believe that they are brainless or mindless terrorists, just dead set on violence and chaos. But if you look at in Palestine at the moment, like, a lot of the martyrs there, they're academics, they're doctors, they're computer programmers up in your neck of the woods in the north and in Ireland in general. Some of the heroes in Irish history have been scholars, playwrights, academics, and they just got involved in the liberation movement out of necessity. But it was the same in Robben Island. There was so much expertise and knowledge in there that they began teaching each other. And I remember we were in the stone breaking yard, where they had to work during the day. They just used to have to break snow white limestone in the blazing sun. No sunglasses, which you might think, you're not going to get sunglasses in a prison, it's a luxury thing. But they were going blind because it was so bright, the glare of it. But they had a kind of a cave dug out in the quarry, and that was known as the University of Robben Island. And they used to teach each other, and they were as good as a doctorate by the time they were released, because they were in for so long, and they used to smuggle books out and smuggle books in. And you're thinking, like, they're not. But the media at the time, I can imagine, before the anti-apartheid movement gained traction, the media would have you believe that Mandela and his crew were just mindless terrorists, dead set on violence, or a death cult, as they claim the Arabs are, some of them in the liberation movements today. And another interesting thing I found out later on, which was sad actually, there was a Jewish guy by the name of Goldberg, if I can remember right, but he was very much involved in the liberation movement with Mandela. And he was also imprisoned for a very long time on Robben Island. But because he was white, Mandela never got to see him or interact with him. And I was just thinking, like, even though they're in prison like that on an island out there, they still weren't allowed mix because of the colour difference. Like, and there was a bit of a sadness about that,
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that bit, James, particularly around the white and the limestone and the caves, because that was part of the journey. So it's just fascinating when you listen to people telling these stories, and how they've stood the test of time. They're real, they're raw, they're authentic, and you just connect so much with them in relation to your own journey or people around you's journey, and you sort of sit to wonder, how did they do what they did under such strict circumstances and regime where security was high, they were embargoed? How did you think about not only the teaching of each other, but how that knowledge was shared out, and the equity from it, and then how they got that out from when it got to the stage that when Mandela was nearing the end of his third term, that the country knew something was going to happen. The Afrikaans knew that something was going to happen, and actually it happened. And you could say it was 26 years in the making. It was before that, because they were planning how to do this long before they went into the justice system. Yeah,
our tour guide was amazing as well, by the way. And a lot of most of the people working on the island now, because it's a museum and one of the biggest attractions in the world, really, for people pilgrimage and going there to see it. As you said, it's a bucket list thing for so many people across the world. But the tour guide we had was amazing, and he was a great sense of humour and stuff. But he said, and he knew that we were all from different nationalities around the world, And he said, I bet you, he said, I have a connection on this place for every country. Just name a country. So obviously, I came up with Ireland, you know, whenever too shy to throw out Ireland, you know. So he'd so many stories of Irish connections there, not least the Dunn Stores boycott in the 80s that led to, it was part of the broader divestment movement that really led to the end of apartheid. But the Dunn Stores grocery store workers, the women in Dublin, went on strike for a long time under enormous pressure. But it started a movement within Ireland to block trading of goods and services with apartheid South Africa, and that happened globally as well, and it brought about an end. Another one, then there's actually an Irish graveyard on the island, and I remember he was telling us then that he brought Jerry Adams and another few of them around on a tour over there. And I remember I was up at Queen's University. I met yourself up there for a conference, and we met Jerry in Falls Road in the James Connolly Centre, and I was telling him about, we were in Robben Island, and he said when he went over there to visit Robben Island, they went to the Irish graveyard, and there was Easter lilies growing on it. So somebody was after planting Easter lilies there, or else it was a sign from God.
Well, there was actually a gentleman who spent time on Robben Island with Mandela, and he actually came to meet us for a lunch on St. Patrick's Day, which was the day before. Now, he's still involved in conflict and peace
building
globally, because he mentioned Sinn Féin.
Yeah.
In his conversation, he says, I do a bit of work, and I've did a bit of work previously with Sinn Féin in relation to what we've did here and the peace process in Northern Ireland. And so we started chatting about that. And then there was, which I thought was a lovely touch, and when we were walking into Robben Island with our guide, we had these t-shirts, white t-shirts with said on it, Global Freedom Fellowship, and then on the back there was a map of South Africa, and then there's words within the map. And there was three elder gentlemen, maybe in their 70s, early 80s, sitting on a bench as we were walking along. And the guy says, because you have all these different nationalities and cultures, so people asked who's that there. So the guy says, who's this group here? And the guy sitting on the bench with a wee pipe and a flat cap says, they're Mandela's people. That's what I thought was lovely. I thought it's a great touch.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a special place. But did you go to Brandvlay prison, the maximum security?
Yeah, I mean, I went to Brandvlay. I actually did an interview for the in-prison radio station, which was interesting. It was set up, James, 6 years ago, and what I found really fascinating about it, it doesn't just go out inside the prison; it goes out externally, so people in South Africa can listen to it. And it's a partnership between the university, the prison, particularly the juvenile justice element of the prison, and a media company. So they've developed this 1 year apprenticeship program in multimedia, which includes podcasting and how to give interviews, etc. So when I went round with the guy who started it all, I didn't know I was going in for an interview. I just thought I was going in to get a tour and look around the studio and stuff. And then the next minute I'm sitting down in the chair with headphones and a mic in front of me with the guy with a list of questions. And we just went. Young lad, only 21, 22, sitting, you'll see it in the photographs, sitting in a blue jumpsuit with sort of orange on it. But absolutely state-of-the-art studio. I mean, I was blown away. I mean, real state-of-the-art when you think about where it was and the guys and the opportunity and the education they were getting from that. And I had an opportunity to speak to 2 or 3 of them. So we're all working in different positions within the studio. One on sound, one on video, one on... Absolutely fascinating. But inside Brandville Prison.
Yeah, I remember when we were driving in, it's a huge complex as well, isn't it? Like the footprint is many square kilometers. And I remember there was football pitches, good full-size football pitches all around. And we were in a room talking to the men. and we were having a discussion, a great discussion. Oh, but there was a couple of prison officers present. No, they weren't saying anything, and so we got a chance to ask questions. So the question I asked was, I see a lot of great facilities around, because I'm into football and the gym and things like yourself, Michael. It's an important thing when you're in prison, I think, to be able to exercise, especially if you have great facilities. You've got the best weather, in Africa, and you've got great football pitches. You've a lot of fit men. And I was asking, like, how often do they get to use the facilities, like the gyms and the football pitches? And the fellow I was asking, you could see he was getting uncomfortable. He didn't really want to answer me because he was kind of giving a side eye to the officers. And he says, well, to be honest, he says, we don't really get to do it that much. And then another fella from across the room says, come on now, he says, be honest with him. What percentage of the time do we get to spend in the facilities, the gym and the football? He says, all right, so 0.
Jesus.
They don't get to use them at all.
Yeah, and as you described there, some of the best facilities you will see in relation to what they have around. The backdrop, even where it's placed in the backdrop that they have is absolutely an area of outstanding beauty. What I found really fascinating about it was we managed to speak with a number of guys who were involved with the Ubuntu education program. So it's that whole I am because you are, that whole Ubuntu philosophy and message. So they were involved in that. So they were totally engaged with us and the exercises that we were doing. But then as I was going for the interview, I got an opportunity to walk around different parts of the prisons, obviously with this guy guiding me. And part of that was I managed to go around and see a lot of the juvenile justice. And as I was walking around, it's like an outdoor exercise area, but it's like a grass area where the guys can sort of go outside and relax out of their cell. The guy opened his window because I was someone new, and he says, "What are you doing? What's your name? Why are you here?" etc., etc. But as he was doing it, I could see in to their room, and there was there was at least 6 or 8 of them, and the smell, like it was young men, sort of 18 to 25, and I was looking in. It was like dark, like basement type. It was very, very poor lighting. The guys just were walking about in their boxers, but the smell, because I had the windows closed, I was like, oh my god. And I'd say in heart, and then they all came over, and I started getting an opportunity to talk to them. But it lasted about 3 minutes because then one of the guards came me and said, "Hoi, hoi." They didn't want me to see anything that I shouldn't have been seeing or talking to anyone that I shouldn't have been talking to. So it went like that, come, and then away we went again.
And some of them were saying to me as well, to the group, that if they're lucky enough to be involved in education, they're doing courses, that if it comes to an exam and let's say they have 2 hours to do the exam, they could spend the first half an hour running around the prison looking for a pencil, and they don't have pencils to do the exams. These are the type of things like that, just trivial, stupid things that should be just, sorted, and just, I think, some basic, simple things that you could provide to improve the energy and just the conditions for people in the prison. But I couldn't help but think of Paulo Freire when he speaks about the oppressor or the oppressed becoming the oppressor, because most of the prison officers are South Africans themselves, they're not white people, like. And that's their brothers and sisters that they're treating like that. Like they were saying that sometimes they get meat into the prison, and the officers bring it home. So they're stuck then eating just bone broth or whatever it is, terrible, terrible nutrition. And I just think like that, I was looking at the prison officers and the prisoners, and I'm thinking like, it could be them in the morning, the way the system was rigged for against a certain colour, do you know what I mean? Because there's not that many white prisoners. You get the odd one or two. We went to Polesmore prison. We met the women in Polesmore prison, a big group of women. There was one white woman who we didn't actually get chatting to her. I didn't know her story, but I was interested. I would have liked to have got talking to her about, what was her background, how did she end up there? But not all the white people in South Africa live in privilege either. Like there is white people in the townships too.
Yeah, that's one of the most striking things I think I take away from it as well, James, that there's certain parts where you go that you can see white privilege everywhere you look. You know, high walls, barbed wire, gated communities, security dogs, black caretakers or washing cars, whatever it may be, around certain streets. The beaches, we had an opportunity to go to a couple of the beaches. I didn't see one black or coloured person, because you can say that in terms of the breakdown.
Yeah.
Anywhere for as far as the eye could see, and then we get into the cab and went 15 minutes up the road, and I couldn't see a white person. And it's the compare and contrast is just go, wow. And I live in a community, I live in a city that's not overly diverse. I mean, most of where I live is sort of white, Caucasian,
Yeah.
Protestants and Catholics. We're not like a Dublin or like in Ireland, but the diversity is sort of, 15-20%. If we even have 3%, potentially we're doing good. So me, and I don't know whether that you felt this, but when I was walking through townships and communities that were, I actually felt, and I spoke to a couple of people like this, I felt as if I was a president, even been in that space, because they were looking at me going, and I'm going, is this? It was so strange.
Yeah.
It was so strange.
Do you know where I felt? That most? Do you know along the couple of weeks in Cape Town, in particular, Baz brings the group to these vineyards where they have beautiful restaurants and the most amazing settings, but they're all old slavery plantations. And on the old slavery plantations now are beautiful restaurants, lovely grounds. You could sit out hills, green. It looks like Ireland, but with sunshine. It has all the green hills. It's not like an arid dry land. It's a very lush green land, but beautiful sunshine as well. So if you can imagine the green hills, the big bright bushy green trees, and then the vineyards along the hills for as far as they can see. It's just a beautiful setting, but just the history of it then is horrific. But
Yeah.
even though we're removed from apartheid now, which apartheid is just a Dutch word for segregation, in case people don't know. So where the black people and the coloured people couldn't go to the same places as the white people, much like the South in the United States for a long time as well. So not everybody knows what apartheid means, but in terms of what you expressed, how you felt there in the townships, I felt that there because let's say if I went up to the bar for a glass of Coke and you're being served by black and coloured people are waiting the tables, they're bringing the food, they're on the tills, and you're just imagining like, this is how it used to be 50, 30, 40, 50 years ago, only that they're probably getting the minimum wage now when they wear a uniform, but it's the same dynamic. You got the white people are there laughing and they're jovial, drinking and eating with their families in lovely setting, and they're being tended to by the black people. And I was there thinking like, do they look at me now as like some rich Westerner? When I'm not, you know what I mean? I have nothing, But that's like, it's a strange type of perspective, I think, because I've never felt that white privilege before until I was in that setting where I really felt like, do they look at me as like a white privileged European, and do they look down on me, or do they look at me in a negative light? It's an interesting type of situation to be in, isn't it? Yeah,
and I mean, I was trying to, as you were chatting there, reflect. Have you ever been to Whitechapel in London?
No, I haven't.
So in Whitechapel, as soon as you get off the train, and you exit the train station, you're in the market stalls. Think about, for anybody who want to watch these standards in the market stalls, only foods and horses. But you will very rarely see a white person. Very rarely see it. So when I got off the train and I walked to the right, and I started to get my bearings around me because I was going to a meeting, and I started looking around me and going, and I caught myself on for two reasons. One, I was being followed because I had a laptop in a bag, and I caught two guys as I was walking past the shop following me, so I knew I was going to get hit for the laptop. So I managed to sneak into the next business because there was a police car sitting beside one of the stalls, And I was watching the two guys as they came down, look right, look left, and then they walked left. And I
Yeah.
actually phoned the guy I was due to meet. And I said to him, I'm caught between a rock and a hard place here. I think your venue's about half a mile away. I'm being stalked by two guys. They're after the laptop. I don't know what they're carrying, but I'm not prepared to walk another half mile down. And he says, where are you? And I told him, he says, stay where you are. So he had to come and escort me down to where we were meeting. And then he brought me right back to the train station again. Instead of giving me pre-warning that something might happen, that's when I really felt that I went, Jesus, I could have went really left. Because if they had went for the laptop, there was a lot of important information on the laptop.
It's game on then.
It probably would have been wouldn't have been, here you go.
Yeah.
It was going to be a struggle, and I knew that. So I was so grateful that he came and got me, and then brought me back to the train station. But I said to him straight after, if we're meeting again, just meet me somewhere, either in the train station for a coffee, or we'll go somewhere else. And that's when you were talking about South Africa and feeling and experiencing and what way people were looking at you. That was the same. So I felt really out of place. So you can imagine what was going through people's head when they're surrounded by people who, you mentioned apartheid, who are pressing them on rights and liberties and access to opportunities. I've never, well, I have experienced that before as a young person because of where I grew up, but it wasn't the colour of my skin. It was because of my nationality.
But mate, want to elaborate on that a little bit, Michael? Because that's like there's not many white Europeans or white Westerners experience that when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, James, I mean, the conflict in the north is well written about. I grew up in late 70s in West Belfast, so I can't remember that those 4 to 5 years, sort of that late 70s into the early 80s period, but I can remember from at least, I mean, 82, I can remember the World Cup, so I'm starting to, the Italian World Cup, so I'm starting to fling my memories from there. But a bit like as we chatted at the start about the young people growing up and they think that's normal and around them, they're carrying guns, there's violence, there's chaos, there's whatever issues they're facing. Well, that's what we grew up in as well. We thought that was normal.
So do you know, like,
Abnormal.
you know, Louis Theroux did a documentary recently on the settlers in the West Bank, Israeli settlers in the West Bank, and he's been brought around by this Palestinian guy, and they have to go through checkpoints, and they're not allowed into certain areas. Was it like that in Belfast?
Yeah, I mean, we're very conscious about where we could go, where we could not go, so that the access to city centre, that was a checkpoint. To move across, there was checkpoints nearly everywhere you went because they were obviously trying to stop the provisionals from moving weapons or planting bombs or creating attacks. Whereas in our communities, young people were galvanised to go out and run smoke screens because they wanted and they were getting involved. They weren't getting involved. They were caught up in everything that was going around them. So you're a young guy. There's chaos. There's mayhem. You're attracted to it. You're like a firefly. You're there. So when the British Army moved in or the police moved in, I mean, I've lost count how many times I was stopped as a young person with my friends, searched. I mean, back then it was just the army and the police really did what they want. There was no, he's only X age or he's only that age. It was just stopped and it's not a search. You to search. If you want to intimidate you, they'll intimidate you. So I grew up in that, and then I lived in an interface, so there was always a lot of trouble. Even so much so that the dads had to stand out a lot of nights in vigilante against the areas that on both sides because they were trying to run in and burn families or attack, etc. So I can remember that vividly, and then I remember on the 11th and the 12th, the Saracens used to move in, so that for those who don't know, they're heavily fortified tanks, if you want to describe them, with hatches, and then two men can come out the top with guns, and then there's hatches at the side they can use guns. So they would have come into our area at the crack of dawn on the marching season and blocked off our whole streets with these large screens, and we couldn't get out. So you literally couldn't get out. You couldn't go to the shop. You could do nothing basically but stay in the house. And then because they were antagonising with the sound of the drums and the shouting and all the verbals that interacted, then you'd imagine young Catholics in our side trying to get over the fence or over the Saracens or trying to find a way round. And I mean, one day we managed to get into this empty house. I think it was about 12 of us. Oh my God, I think we were only 10 or 11 at the time. But we were looking right out onto the main road where the march was taking place, and there was hundreds, and the army was here, and the police was here, and someone saw us from across and shouted, and then that raised the alarm. So next minute, must have about 7 or 8 police officers stormed this place for a load of 10 and 11-year-olds, and just literally grabbed us straight in, no questions asked, straight into the back of the jeep. Where do you live? Bring us there now. So they're dragging you down to your parents' door. Your mum and dad's up the high door thinking you've done something. You actually hadn't done anything. You've been in an empty house and they thought you were going to do something, but you've done nothing. But then you're arrested and you were through back to the house. So just stuff like that was normal, James.
I remember spoke to a fella from your side of the world, from West Belfast, when we were up in Belfast last year, and he was talking about, when there were young fellas going to the pub, 19, 20, dialed up, going out to the pub in the 80s, and there could be some 20-year-old fella from young soldier from somewhere like Wigan or Stoke standing on a street corner afraid of his life waiting to be taken out by some IRA sniper. And they're like, them young fellas need to be sent home. They have no business being there. It was so unsafe for a lot of those, like, we think a lot of the British soldiers, obviously we think of them from a particular perspective where we're from. But I think it's always the young working class people that are sent into the front lines with no history, no context, and soldiers they're bred for fighting. Do you know what I mean? But they're in a civilian setting then, trying to be the police, and it was never going to work out. It wasn't.
You're bringing army tactics into urbanized areas, which is just ludicrous, and trying to adapt the same principles and the same methods and the same principles of how you would contain or how you would civic obedience and stop murders and stop riots and stop hijacking and stop violence. In doing that, they basically segregated both communities. If you think about the history of this place, they were actually brought in initially to protect the Catholics and the Nationalists.
And we're welcome.
And we're welcomed. And then within a couple of years, that it went full 360. And everything was pushed towards the Protestant Unionist Loyalist community, and the Catholics said we're completely left, guys. You need to do whatever you're going to do, whatever that looks like, and that's hard to start going.
Yeah, well, we digress there, but it's a good context because it just shows why Irish people have such a connection with people in South Africa, people of Palestine, and other liberation movements or countries under occupation or apartheid, and people fighting for civil rights and things like that,
Yeah.
So,
opportunities, education, houses, the right to vote.
Yeah, because
you think about what happened in apartheid South Africa. It nearly mimicked what was going on locally. I mean, the gerrymandering of systems and land in particular, moving people and displacing them. And then if there's a heavily populated Catholic area, moving a boundary line so a unionist politician could get a seat in the council. With the vast bulk of the area that he's local councillor for, it's not Catholics.
Yeah.
They're completely opposed to everything he stands for. It was absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, because when people think of the Troubles in the North, they think of they wanted independence, and it became that, but it started out as one man, one vote. It started out as, and it was inspired, a lot of it was inspired as well by the civil rights movement in the United States in the 60s as well, and there was a lot of that across the world at the time. There was students marching across Europe, for human rights and equality and stuff like that. So that's how it started out, and it was met with such a iron fist, really. It was like putting a sledgehammer to a berry, really, with how the British kind of responded to it. And then that grew the violence, I think, and the provisionals kind of grew out of that. But yeah, but if we go back to South Africa, before we finish up, Michael, I think it maybe one of the most beautiful and positive memories I have of it was we went to an outdoor music kind of a gig dance thing. It's on every Sunday evening, called Rands, and it's in the town. It's in the township of Coyalicha. Now you wouldn't want to be venturing outside or getting lost, but inside it was good crack.
Yeah, I mean, it's hugely popular, and if you look at if people get an opportunity, I mean, what they do on social media about promoting that and the marketing and what goes on inside it around culture and dance and the whole environment is absolutely staggering. Because as you say, it's probably one of the most challenging areas that you'll ever walk through or drive through. Yeah, so I actually had a fellow who was from Kaisha, and when I think about what we had to drive through to get the Rands and what he was showing me on his phone as the were Rands would, I couldn't quite comprehend. Or that, like, back to this, as we chatted about a diamond in the rough. So here's a place that people celebrate, enjoy themselves. You know, it's beamed all around the world in terms of the images and the pictures. It's on the tourist board website. And as soon as you leave it, you're back in the shanty town, you're back into poverty, deprivation, crime, you know, people trying to survive. It was just, it's...
Are you back?
Can you see? Yeah, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yeah, but you were talking about, you know, how Rand's Music Festival in the heart of Coyalicha Township, which is one of the roughest parts of South Africa, but it's like a diamond in the rough. But I never felt unsafe there. Or like you could walk around on your own. There was no trouble there. There was no violence. There was just the dancing, the music, the rhythm. It was just a fabulous atmosphere.
Yeah, and that guy I mentioned, he was in what was called the Numbers Gang. So if anyone's ever watched Inside the World's Toughest Prisons with Raphael Rowe, Raphael goes into one of the prisons and he meets the Numbers Gang, and they have these numbers on the side of their neck.
Remember Ross Kemp interviewed John Mongrel?
So you've got these really opposing forces, where you think, right, the Numbers Gang, a lot of people from this area are involved in crime and drugs and violence against the community, and you know, quite savage in how they deal with disputes or how they manage that whole situation. And then you've got this, you know, venue that everybody goes to and celebrates, and people from all around the world go to it and they take pictures, and it's just so difficult to wrap your head around. But as you say, you never at any point feel that you're in a township and you're under threat or something might happen to you. Everyone's just enjoying themselves. The atmosphere is fantastic. The spirit of the people, the happiest. It's absolutely amazing, the experience.
Yeah, so I definitely would like to go back to South Africa. I think that I'd love to do safari. I'd like to go out onto the sea and see the great white sharks, and you know, there's so much wildlife, there's so much beauty there that you couldn't get to see it in a couple of weeks even, you know.
Now, I know we're coming to the end of this podcast, but I'll tell you a funny story. We actually went to safari, and we had a trailer with all the suitcases in it on the back of the van. And when we got up to the safari, it was dirt tracks, it was dirt road, and he was towing a lot of weight. So when we finally got on level, the road was really slippy. There was no stones, no gravel for grip. So that he lost control basically, and he skidded off the side of the road, and he was really stuck, like deep down in the mud. And the guy who was with us, he contacted the safari, so they were going to send down 4x4 trucks, but that was for us. We still had to get the minibus and the cases up. So so word of a lie, as soon as we jumped out of the bus, most people lost their shoes, right? Because the mud was so deep. So in the videos and in the imagery, you'll see us putting rocks under the wheels of the minibus and then jacking up the back of it. I'm in my bare feet because it was so warm, and so you think I'm wearing Timberland boots. You can see my feet is deep down buried in the mud. And when the guys came down with the 4x4, we got the minibus out, and then we managed to get another guy who was coming in the opposite direction. He actually had a chain to trail out the suitcase. So one of the guys lost his case, big guy from America. he lost his case. But we all could have lost our cases because the back door had actually come open slightly. So as we were driving up that mountainous range, they all could have came out and went right off the side of the cliff.
Jesus
we were going on
Christ.
safari with our clothes of what we were wearing. Yeah, but a really brilliant story because you'd imagine people were videoing that.
Yeah. Have you got photos? Have you got photos and videos of it?
I've got photos and videos.
Send them on, and I can put them onto the video as you're speaking afterwards. Michael, it's been a pleasure. Chat to you next week again.
Same to you, James. Thanks a lot.
Slán.
Bye bye.